Do you like movies and games also? Listen, so much more, they all know. Vice, Lotus and Friends, welcome to Corrective Consciousness.
Welcome to Corrective Consciousness, episode 111, the podcast where we explore the inanity of pop culture. I'm your host, vysethebold, and this is...
Lotus Prince.
And Stompy. So, since my birthday was last week, my father told me that I no longer have to call myself OldManStompy. It's just assumed.
It's just assumed. That's pretty
older
good.
Man Stompy.
Yeah, even older.
So, in light of the recent events, we actually have decided to have an episode where we explore our favorite Teletubby characters.
Obviously.
What is your favorite?
Well, sadly, I did not grow up with the show, so even if I did have a favorite, I couldn't apply a name to him.
Okay.
Mine is the son.
The baby son.
The baby, yeah.
Yep.
See, I like the vacuum guy. He's definitely my favorite.
I don't even know what that is.
He's the guy who performs the maintenance on the spaceship of the Teletubbies.
All right.
Is Mr. Rogers in this one, or is that only the crossover episode in my fanfiction?
Won't you be my tubby?
Gross.
I think we're done here.
So enough of that horse shit.
No, I thought that was great. That's usually the kind of bullshit that we leave off of the episode, the podcast before we start recording. But now it's right there for everybody to see on YouTube.
Warning, this is canon.
Just like Pokeball. What we were discussing is, in light of the releases that .emu is putting out recently with the Wonder Boy one and the most recent Wonder Boy the Windjammers 2, Take a Drink, and also Streets of Rage 4. What would you like to see a remake or budget sequel to? I'm sure OldManStompy has a couple in mind since he suggested the topic. I'm also going to put him on the spot while I think of something. So
I would love to see a Streets of Rage 5.
Well, I mean that'll highly depend on how Streets of Rage 4 does, right?
Yeah, of course.
It's pretty exciting that this is happening because part of the whole point, for example, of Windjammers was that nobody had really experienced the game, and it's pretty unique in its genre. So, there was a lot of mileage to be gotten just out of porting it to every platform, but now it's reached the saturation point, and it's successful enough that I think it's worthwhile to make a Windjammers 2, and that's pretty exciting to me.
The cool thing about it is that upon its original, this is like a found game. This was not a popular game when it came out. In fact, nobody even really talked about it or knew about it until the Giant Bomb guys really brought it to light. This is a found gem, that caught on much later. There's plenty of other games like that. Like Clash of Demon Head was never popular when we were kids, but now is a big game that people go back to and make reference to. So,
was that because Scott Pilgrim alluded to it?
Yeah, I mean that was one of the things. Yeah,
or Shatterhand, if we're going with Scott Pilgrim references.
Yeah. I mean, Shatterhand is actually a title that has shot up in value because of that. Conquest of the Crystal Skulls, or Crystal Palace. I mean, not the Indiana Jones movie. There's quite a few NES games where people didn't give a damn about back in the day that people nowadays are like, wow, Kickmaster, that's another one. Kickmaster's a great game. I don't know if you ever played Kickmaster, but...
What a name.
Yeah,
I last saw it on Nick Arcade as one of the games that they had to play.
Oh God!
So Kickmaster is a game by Taito that is essentially Castlevania, but you're a kung fu master.
All right. And
it's a lot more colorful than Castlevania, but it's a lot of fun. It's a character action game, kind of like Holy Diver or whatever, but and a high quality one at that. But
it's also got kind of
gave a damn about
it's got kind of like a level up mechanic, like Double Dragon, where your moves improve as you pick up experience from beating monsters.
That's cool.
Yeah, there's a bunch of games like that. Power Blade was never a popular, really super popular title back in the day.
Enough that I got a sequel, Power Blade 2.
Yeah, but lots of games got sequels back then, regardless of whether they were super popular or not. I mean, like, yeah, Flintstones 2. I mean, the original Flintstones game was not a big game.
Yeah, but that was a license. So if the license does not succeed in the first time, you'd expect them. It has still has value. So they try to like milk a little bit more out of it. Like that's the one exception that I'd have, and like it's kind of what we're talking about here, is right. We're talking about games that. I mean, if the game was really popular, of course it's eventually going to get a sequel. In fact, they'd probably try to make several sequels and until nobody buys them anymore. But we're talking about found gems like Windjammers or games like Streets of Rage where the market just isn't heading in that direction. And until we got these, until the rising popularity of like streaming of digital delivery services, there wasn't really a venue to publish these games. Without really restricting yourself.
Point.
Yeah,
it's really the price point. They don't belong on shelves.
Yeah.
Well, maybe in recent times they do because there's a collector market for physical goods. But there didn't used to be. I mean, it didn't used to be a place where things like Blade Strangers or which is something that's just being released on Tuesday of this week. Stuff like that never used to really have a good market for it.
Yeah. But by the way, real quick, speaking of games like Streets of Rage, I actually wouldn't mind seeing like the old beat 'em up style of Golden Axe again, because the last one of those we got was the Revenge of Death Adder.
Well, no, the last. Oh,
the beat 'em up
you
style.
don't mean Beast Rider?
No, I do not. No, sir.
What were you gonna say, OldManStompy? Or
I was
Stompy.
Yes, ManStompy. I prefer Person Stompy. But
he'll stomp anyone.
Yeah, but
Young Stompy.
Yeah, Young Stompy. I prefer Mr. Stompy. Young Stompy is my son. Someday.
Wait. You don't prefer Dr. Stompy?
He'll have to fill in my boots. One day.
Yeah, but I would have thought you would have gone for Dr. Stompy.
I'm not that pretentious. You can call me Doctor if you really feel
I didn't spend 6 years in Stompy school to be called Mr.
More like 11, but PhD program in physics is long.
But you could call yourself D Doctor, which is DDR.
Well, what would the first D stand for? Did you think that far ahead?
OldManStompy.
Doyle.
Amazing.
Do you like Monkey Ball? Maybe it'd be OldManStompy.
I do. I do.
We need more pineapple references. And banana
nice.
references.
The D stands for Deadpool.
Perfect.
But yes, please go on.
So I was just going to say that part of what part of this is probably the mobile game revolution, and the fact that nobody wants to buy a cartridge to stick in their smartphone, or not that you even could if you wanted to. So there is a market for games that can be played on tablet, games that can be played on a Galaxy or an iPhone.
So one thing I've been noticing is that the mobile game space doesn't seem to have eaten up the market like it used to. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but there was a time in which a lot of companies were diverting their attention just to do mobile, and maybe that is the case with certain companies. But I think nowadays there are enough indie developers to fill the gap where those developers left. I mean, you still have companies like Konami focusing their efforts on mobile games. Also, Square Enix is a big mobile game developer and makes a lot of their revenue off of mobile games. But I don't see it to consoles' detriment anymore like I used to. I don't know whether you have noticed that.
Well, I also think that the devices have improved to the point where the markets are starting to overlap. So, like, Fortnite is on mobile now, that.
Yeah, I noticed that, yeah.
So it's not like you're making a game that can't then be released on PC and, attract a reasonable crowd.
Yeah, and not only that, but some mobile games are getting PC ports. The other way around. So that's always a good thing. A lot of times, what they've been doing is they've been taking away the gacha elements, and actually putting in the work to make them games that would work on console or PC.
Oh,
which is
so,
nice.
It's a cultural distinction. So I had this explained to me that like in Japan, where a lot of these companies exist, there's because it's such a society that's built around having a career and like being extremely productive, and it's a very like pluralistic society that like doesn't necessarily reward individual achievement. That like there's an equation between time and money, in that like any time that you're spending video games is time that you could be spent like working and making money for yourself. But that also means that it's okay to spend money to progress in a game. You're basically trading that money back for more time to go pursue other leisure activities or to be productive in other ways. And you can see this in the way that like Western and Eastern RPGs diverged, and that a game like Dragon Quest is beatable just by grinding a lot, whereas a game like one of the old AD&D games, you can't beat that by grinding. It's not intended to be beaten.
Like a gold box game.
Yeah, or a Bard's Tale or anything like, or a Baldur's Gate. You don't beat those games by grinding.
Those games are more based off of the original Dungeons and Dragons, where you're not really grinding when you're playing Dungeons and Dragons. You're trying to get through a scenario.
Yeah, the DM tells you what's happening. Like I've never heard of a D&D campaign where you like leave a dungeon and like, can I go back in and pick up what I missed and kill more goblins or whatever?
That's not the point. You level up as you go as a consequence of going through the game normally. Not the other way around.
Especially with Dungeons and Dragons, because the whole point of that game is you're sitting there with your friends imagining things. Do you really want to fantasize about boring repetition?
But nonetheless, the Western style of RPGs have continued to Fallout games, like the Elder Scrolls games. They've all continued to embody that idea that building your character well is more important than the amount of time that you spent playing the game. Whereas all these like very grindy RPGs like Final Fantasy, like Dragon Warrior, like all the Korean MMOs, they continue to come out of the East Asian countries.
Gotcha. Well, in going into with this, it's a good time to mention that there is a fan sequel. Well, not a fan sequel, but rather a sequel of this ilk. And a remake coming out of this ilk that we haven't mentioned yet. I don't know if you guys have noticed this, but they're remaking the original Bard's Tale trilogy.
That's pretty wild.
To have modern amenities in it, which is fantastic. It's one of the pillars of old RPG games. So the two main pillars are probably Wizardry and Ultima. Those are the two most important. But after that, Bard's Tale is like right next to it, and let me see. There's also a few other ones, that are tentpole releases. That the gold box games again are very important to RPG history, Western RPG history. So it's great that they're releasing these for a new audience. I think you could always buy the original trilogy from GOG. Along with the fourth game that was made a little while ago. That game was kind of like a remake or like a reboot kind of game, and a lot of people liked it because the dialogue choices were really funny. And it came with the original three games.
As I recall, they made a more modern Bard's Tale game for the PS2 at least.
Yes.
And that was that was basically satire. It was real tongue in cheek, like a Deadpool game.
Yeah, people really liked, at the time, apparently some of the jokes haven't aged well, the sexism and things like that at the time. But they are making an official fourth game. So I guess they're discounting that game as part of the series at large. But they are making a fourth game that will use like the art style of the remakes of the original trilogy. So that's really cool. I've always really wanted a new Commander Keen game.
That's a pretty good one.
Interesting, yeah.
I'm a big old Apogee fan because, like, back in the day, I didn't have a computer probably until Windows 95 when a lot of other people got computers. But my friends had like a lot of other really cool games, like the first two, the first Commander Keen trilogy and the second Commander Keen trilogy. Games like Biomenace, and of course Doom and the original Dark Forces. Those were all a big part of me going over to my friend's house and playing games on his computer. So those were like a big part of my childhood and original PC experiences. So having another Commander Keen game, especially when these current art styles would lend themselves well to it. The hand drawn art style of the guy who's doing the Wonder Boy remake and also the Streets of Rage 4. That type of art style would really lend itself well to it because a lot of it's like whimsical toys and stuff like that. I like the Goonies-like nature of Commander Keen too, with the imagination factor and all that stuff in it. So I really want to see something new come out of that.
It's sort of what I like so much about this like current renaissance of like sort of these mid-tier like $15 to $20 Steam and mobile titles is that companies aren't afraid anymore to make sprite-based 2D platformers, when we all recall that like around the PlayStation era, like Sony would not release 2D games unless they really had a strong compelling reason to do so, and it kind of killed the genre for a while.
Yeah, in fact, a lot of us who like that style of gameplay had to get our kicks on Game Boy Advance for a long time, or DS. Mm-hmm. You saw old school beat 'em ups being made for GBA. You could play Double Dragon Advance or Gekio,
River City Ransom.
Yeah, River City Ransom. There were quite a few good games in that style. There's Ninja 5.0. I mean, you didn't see games like a game like Ninja 5.0 would be made these days for PC as a console release. So it wouldn't be a stripped down GBA title where the graphics were limiting and the sound hardware was poor. You get a game to the max, that was fully designed for that system. It just wouldn't need a AAA budget in order to get released, which is quite fine.
Yes. It's all about managing expectations, and I'm glad that like it's not. It used to be that games were so expensive to make, and the overhead was so high on producing a physical release of a game that the current market now supports like a little bit riskier titles. Like even on the console, you can have sort of like AA titles. Like Darksiders 3 is a AA title, which is a little bit unfortunate because it's a great series, but that never would have gotten made 5 years ago.
The team that made Enslaved made that, was it Hellblade?
Yes, that's the other one I'm thinking of. Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice was a AA title, and it was not sold for $60, and it's a short experience, but it's worth it for the art.
Yeah, and you know what? It's okay to have that tier of game, because if it was pushed as a AAA title, it wouldn't have been successful. Mm-hmm. But as a result, it's a smaller game, but it got the attention that it wanted. Also for the social issues that it brings up. The game is heavily involved in a person with mental problems and emotional issues.
Yeah, that's another aspect of it. It's a risky idea that wouldn't get made in a situation where people are primarily focused on safe interpretations of known IPs. So there's a thing about, if you watch I think it's Smash Brothers Brawl that does the All-Star mode where you play all the characters, fight against all the characters in the order that they appeared in, that they debuted. And there's practically nobody from like the mid-90s to like the late 2000s. And they had some commentary on like these days it's just very hard to invest and debut a new IP for a short period of time. And of course now it's not so much anymore. Like Nintendo, of course, is at times extremely risky, and they've got like Splatoon out of it and some other things. But at the time it was really hard to get new IPs out.
Well, I think with the Switch, they've delved into giving a lot of things a chance. I think they're a lot more open-minded than they ever used to be, and a lot easier to work with than they used to be. They used to be kind of like, you need to come to us kind of attitude. And now, I mean, you see every moderately popular indie title either on the Switch or people are begging for it to be on the Switch. So you see people being quite okay in a lot of instances. The Switch versions are outselling the Steam versions, which I wouldn't have thought was even fathomable.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's like unheard of. Yeah.
A lot of developers are saying that the Switch versions are their best-selling versions, which is insane. You know, a lot more people have computers than they do Switches. So you know, they may not have a gaming computer, but
yeah.
They at least have a chance of accessing you know, certain types of games. But that just goes to show how good the platform is for it, and how well they're keeping up the ecosystem for this kind of thing, which is great. And none of the games are compromised. They play exactly the way their PC counterparts do. Only really the AAA titles are slightly compromised, but I mean, even a big AAA title like Doom on the Switch plays very, very, very well. And it is surprising in how well it runs, in fact, on a system like that. But getting back to the topic, I have been loving these competitive short burst games. I mean, we've been loving playing things like Overcooked and Towerfall. I love this sort of game. I think people have been trying to coin a genre term for it, but they've been unsuccessful in getting to start. But couch sports is one of them. Just like games that are really good to play in a room setting, a party setting.
Well, I was actually just gonna say party games. Like we've had this term before, and maybe it doesn't apply specifically to the really brief rounds instead of like, you know, Monopoly or something like that. But still, just party games, because like you're not gonna play single player Overcooked unless you're going for achievements or whatever. Like you're really supposed to play that with friends.
Yeah, sure,
So,
it's a more accurate moniker, I think, than what we used to think of as party games, like a Mario Party or whatever. Because they're intended for high turnover. That's part of why the rounds are so short.
Yeah.
So they're more suited for like a large social gathering.
Yeah, it's called Mario Party, but like those games are an investment. That's not a party game. That's like
They take like an hour to complete.
Yeah, you play that with like your sibling, like not at a party. Like you're not gonna dedicate like an hour to freaking Mario Party where some of your friends are just watching.
Yeah.
Well, that's when you get side bets, you know, when you start getting a pot going and you make some.
Yeah, there we go. No, Mario Party is absolutely like a sibling game, family at best. Like party, I don't think so.
I'm talking about games that you know, support multiple players and have quick rounds. You know, like Nidhogg.
Yeah, those are
games that are quick bursts and you can take turns on. So
yeah, look at Towerfall. Like any given round is typically less than a minute, and like not until somebody wins, but like one round before the arena resets, it's like less than a minute. It's so nice and quick.
So what I was getting at here is Windjammers is kind of like the granddaddy of that kind of thing. Windjammers had that concept before it was popular, you know, and fighting games to a degree as well are like that. But fighting games have require a level expertise that keeps people out of them, whereas something like Windjammers is simple but hard to master, right? So what I was thinking is another game that was like that could use an absolute... And there have been recent entries in this series, but I don't think there has been one that has captured the fun of it in this type of setting. The Super Dodgeball series needs a new budget, like really nice entry that would be good on the big screen.
Was Super Dodgeball one of those Kunio-kun games?
Exactly.
Okay.
So I'm specifically thinking of the Neo Geo version of Super Dodgeball, which is probably the best, if you ask me. It's super fun. The graphics were great, and also really hasn't been re-released on anything else. So if that could either get a port or you know, like a budget type sequel where it's not like the NES graphics, but like cool cartoony graphics, like the super deformed stuff that was in that Neo Geo version, I would love that. That would be another title for
a true sports game that we really need a reboot of. Mega Man Soccer.
So there was a new Kunio-kun game called River City Melee.
Yes.
It was one of
that was a 3DS, right?
No, it was well. I mean, I have it on PS4. I knew about it because it was on limited run games. It does have like a football mode in the spirit of like the old soccer games. It's more of a brawler, but it is another game in that series that did come out quite recently.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know about that. However, I didn't. I want the dodgeball specifically because the dodgeball is like the best sports game that series ever did. Mm-hmm. And not only that, but that game in particular is done in the NES style, and I want more of the cartoony later style that they're kind of ignoring right now.
Oh, sure.
They're kind of doing a big throwback to their NES titles, like with Tokyo Brawl. Yeah. Not that those games aren't good. In fact, the recent Kunio-kun games have actually been a lot of fun. But I think that they could really do something with the dodgeball sub-series for sure. That would be a lot of fun at parties.
Touching on something that you said, I guess kind of leads me to what I would give as my primary answer, and that is that like sometimes you want a game and they like try to make it, or they make it several times until they get tired of trying to make it, and then I just want them to make it the way I want to see it made, and that's a new game in the Mana series. So there have been like a lot of them, So
a lot of attempts too on remakes. I mean, first game's been remade like twice now.
Well, it's not the first game per se. It's the first Mana game, but that's Seiken Densetsu 2, right? Seiken Densetsu 1 also got remade a couple times.
That's what I meant.
Yeah.
Like they recently remade it, and there was also Sword of Mana before that.
Right. So in general, I think the sense that I had gotten previously was that they had really tried to move the Mana series away from its roots because it had too much in common with Kingdom Hearts, which was like a really big seller for Square Enix and continues to be for the foreseeable future. So they made Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 4 was called Dawn of Mana, and it was like this weird physics-based brawler that was just completely impenetrable. It was terrible. I mean, it was nice because it had the aesthetic, and part of why I like the game so much is like the Yoko Shimomura soundtracks and like the game aesthetic and things like that. I don't really care if the games are don't play as smoothly as I remember, but I just like living in the world and playing the games.
The RTS as well around that same
time
period,
there was
right?
there was an RTS, there was a hack and slash, there was Children of Mana, there were Heroes of Mana. I think somewhere around there Dawn of Mana came out. And then I guess what it feels like is that they're just so tired of trying to make a new Mana game that really sticks that they've just settled on remaking Secret of Mana a bunch of times. Because I think it did get a mobile release with like marginally updated graphics in that kind of shitty mobile game way where it doesn't really suit the original aesthetic of the game.
Sure.
And then I think there was I guess the next one was the Final Fantasy Adventure remake that you're referring to, and then there was the 3D Secret of Mana remake. So they're just going back to the roots, and I would like to see there is a lore to the game, and there is a storyline that like takes place over the course. There are like several, Secret of Mana, Seiken Densetsu 3, and I think Heroes of Mana take place in the same universe, and Legend of Mana takes place in its own universe, and they have like their own timelines, kind of like the Zelda series. They follow along, and I'd like to see something new in that space. It doesn't even have to be that great. I just like to play it again.
Another title that I think they should just make a short game and abandon trying to make a full game is they should do this in the style of the N64 game in this series, Star Fox. They should now the last Star Fox game they made was Star Fox Zero. Which nobody liked when it was released. However, people seem to be coming around to that game. Apparently, there's some kind of genius to it that people didn't see when it first was released. So I think it's been a game that has aged well or aged into itself. I haven't played it, so I can't make a judgment.
Are we talking like a God Hands? Because I feel like that was in the same vein. Like people thought it was impenetrable when it came out, and then they understood how like masterfully crafted it was when
no
in
kidding.
the fullness of time.
Well, that would fit. It's made by the same people, right? Star Fox Zero was made by Platinum, who used to be Clover.
Clover.
Yeah. So that would make sense. I genuinely think that Platinum doesn't make any bad games. They might make a positive mediocre game, but never anything bad. They put too much thought into it. So I think that they time just needed to it's one of those things where you taste something bitter and you don't like it because it's something new, and but then you grow to like bitter flavored things. It's kind of like that. I think though that if they just made they don't need to try anything fancy with that series. They could just make another on-rail shooter and people would be happy. And a straight up one. You don't need to add gimmicks to it or anything like that. You could just make a fun on-rail shooter, and you can do that on a budget. You don't need to make that into a AAA title. You don't need to make that into a $60 title. You can make that into a $30 title.
You could make a Bloodstained version of Star Fox, basically.
Yeah, I mean, you know what? Even a flat polygon game with today's resolution and draw distance would be a lot of fun. I mean, they did it with Futuridium, and that game was a lot of fun.
Actually, wait, now that I think about it, Star Fox 64 was kind of a remake of SNES Star Fox, right?
So, Star Fox 64 is kind of like a combination of the original Star Fox and Star Fox 2 that had been unreleased at the time.
Right, and Star Fox Zero
is a remake again of the same thing.
Yeah. So okay. So here we go. Could we have like a modern remake just of Star Fox 2?
I guess you could, but so many of those ideas have been already used in sequels like Star Fox Zero. And Star Fox 64. Plus, they've already re-released finally released.
No,
Star Fox
I know
2.
that they released Star Fox 2, but that game runs at like 10 FPS. It's like, whoa.
Well, sure.
Yeah.
The original Star Fox games in the Super Nintendo, they look like garbage, and like even Miyamoto's admitted that like they were super excited that the technology that he gave this interview where he said like they were really excited about the technology when it came out to use the FX chip. And they would point at these triangles and say like, "Oh my God, look, it's a spaceship," and people will go, "Oh, but it's just a triangle," and they would go, "Oh no, it's a spaceship. Just keep playing the game and you'll see what we're talking about." And then 5 years later, they look at it and they're like, "Oh, they were right. It was just a triangle,"
Well, no, but there is kind of something to that though. Those triangles were like prototypical, like early, super early, like Sega Saturn games almost.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was their competition for. You got to remember what was coming out at the time, which was Virtual Racing and Virtual Fighter. That's what they were competing with and trying to make sure that they had something comparable to.
Well, yeah, but I know why they exist, but they didn't age well at all.
No.
Yeah.
Like even then.
Yeah. Well, flat sheeted. Polygons and big chunky polygons are kind of a thing that are popping up as an aesthetic choice now. But certainly not the way they controlled. The games back then controlled like garbage. They hadn't figured out camera controls yet. So at least we have that down now, and there's no excuse for bad camera controls. In fact, it's rare that you find a game that has garbage camera now. But when it does, it's extremely noticeable. It sticks out like a sore thumb.
It's funny. It actually really threw me. This isn't garbage camera control. It's no camera control. But I remember I loved Metal Gear Solid 2 to death. And even Metal Gear Solid 1, Twin Snakes. I never played OG Metal Gear Solid 1, but I played Twin Snakes. And I loved those games. And then, I eventually played Metal Gear Solid 3 at Luminaire's place. I had a lot of fun with it. But it was, with camera controls. So I was like, oh man, look at this new creativity. And then we played 4, had fun with that. And then I bought the HD collection for myself. And I was like, yo, Metal Gear Solid 2 is always my favorite. Let's play it. And I remember it just really threw me off when I, couldn't alter my view. I had to go, FPS to do anything.
So that's kind of like Resident Evil 4.
Yes.
Remember coming out, when it came out, it was a mind-blowing game. Everybody fucking loved that game.
Yep.
It was a game that, revolutionized. It was one of those tentpole games that comes out every once in a while that changes the style of thinking.
But you still had to 180-degree turn to look around.
Well, that was my point.
Yeah.
You have games like Dark Souls or Demon Souls that influenced tens of maybe even hundreds of games after it. You have like a game like Undertale has influenced plenty of games since that came out. Like tentpole games that have changed the course of the way that mainstream design goes. Binding of Isaac is another one, right?
Yeah.
So many other games are inspired by the design leaps that those games made.
What's funny is how much Isaac and Undertale pay homage to previous games themselves.
Yeah, but you know what I mean.
They do their own thing. Yeah.
They did their own revolutionary thing that plenty of other people are emulating now. And in many different ways too. It's not always in the same way that you would expect.
Sure.
Resident Evil 4 was one of those games. It changed the way we thought about game design.
People
with the
to this day, games still, like the most recent Uncharted does an over-the-shoulder camera. It's crazy.
Yeah, well, without those games, probably the Dark Souls games wouldn't have happened because of the way they control the third-person perspective in those games is very important. And the way that the camera controls. But when you go back to it, there's no strafing, and it's very noticeable. Like and the game isn't designed for strafing,
and you still couldn't move while aiming.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
So you go back and you play Resident Evil 5, and you don't, that's the way you think it should be playing, is Resident Evil 5. But when you go back to 4, you're like, oh man, I have to turn all the way around for this.
It's funny because
it's
funny because I haven't played too many like brand new games like that. Like I've done the Uncharted games, but I was still very much used to like Resident Evil 4 style. So I remember when you were complaining about how the first Dead Rising didn't allow you to move while shooting. And that thought, didn't even occur to me. I was like, that's just how you play video games. And then I played, of all games in the world, Ride to Hell, and I was able to move while aiming, and I was like, yo, look at this. And Mr. Ree was like, are you fucking serious right now? But
how dare you enjoy this awful game?
Yeah.
So that's why I think Dead Rising 2 is much better playing game.
What I'm basically trying to say is Ride to Hell Retribution 1, Resident Evil 4 0.
So to go even further back, I know I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but the original Tomb Raider was considered revolutionary when it came out.
Yeah.
But that was designed to be played on a DualShock, not even a DualShock, on a regular PS1 controller with no analog sticks, and playing it now is just a chore.
It was actually designed as a PC game. It was keyboard and mouse.
Okay, well, it's still. I would imagine it's still a chore on PC and mouse.
Yeah, when it was ported, there were no dual sticks. Yeah,
I mean, thankfully that did get a really nice remake. Tomb Raider Legend is a lot of people consider that to be one of the best games in the series, actually. So I luckily there is a remake for that. But Lotus, you really haven't added too many.
What do I want?
Yeah, what do you want? Is there something that you've been pining that maybe could use some quality of life improvements, or could use a slight update that would bring it to modern audiences like this?
I mean, what I said before, again, I don't know if I've really been pining for this, but if we're going to continue Streets of Rage, I wouldn't mind seeing another Golden Axe either. But that said, regarding the continuation of Streets of Rage, there is one thing I hope about that game. And I hope they don't try to make it a modern game's length. Streets of Rage was cool because it was
didn't wear its welcome.
It was that. Well, that's the whole thing. It's 40 to 60 minutes long. I mean, you've kind of felt this when we Let's Played it. I mean, if you're playing the game by yourself, you don't really notice. But when we're Let's Playing, you run out of stuff to talk about. You move right and you punch a guy. I don't want to do that for 3 or 4 hours. Unless they do something kind of like Double Dragon Neon, where you can quit the game between levels. There's an overworld, or there's checkpoints or something, so you're not playing the whole game but it's 2018. Games need to be longer. Do beat 'em ups need to be longer though? Either give me a reason to pause, or I'm okay if it's an hour long. I really am. With new game
leveling
plus
up mechanics,
Double
Dragon's
Dragon
Crown
Neon.
or Dragon's
Yeah,
Crown.
or Dragon's Crown, yeah.
those even have like missions and stuff that you can go on too.
Yeah,
So,
that's
I
cool
mean,
too. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, another one that I've been thinking of is, before this was a popular thing, they tried doing this on the WiiWare service there with the Rebirth titles. Konami tried doing this very thing that we're talking about. They came up with budget sequels to 3 of their franchises. You had Gradius, Castlevania, and Contra. Yeah. And the big shame is that they're locked now. You can't buy them anymore. They are lost games if you have not bought them or pirated them. Yeah. So I would really like to see more games in those series made in this ilk. Get a scrappy indie developer and just give them the license, just like Sega's allowing to happen with the Streets of Rage series. Why not give a scrappy fan a chance? The person that's making Super Hydora, those games are great. Those shmups are really, really fun, and in the Gradius style. Why not give them an opportunity to make an actual Gradius game?
Speaking of stuff like Gradius, you know what we got to see? I don't even play games like this, but just on principle, we got to get another Abadox. That game is fucking crazy.
Well, that was made by Rare.
Whatever. That game is ridiculous. Like, that level 1 is like the most terrifying thing, and it's like a spaceship shooter game.
Well, that you know what that was inspired by, right? It was inspired by Life Force, which is a Gradius.
Oh, I think I read about that. Yeah, but Abadox is like, I don't know how the gameplay compares because I don't play these things, but the aesthetic and atmosphere are ridiculous. Like, that's where it's at, man. Mm-hmm. Like the first level is like body horror.
Yeah, another title that kind of got this treatment was the Gianna sisters had a couple games actually. They were originally huge ripoffs of the Mario Brothers games made for like the old PCs for European computers.
The Amiga, I think, is the first one to get a Gianna series game. Wow. It's really obvious too, right? Because like they're the great.
The
Gianna
first level's
sisters.
exactly the same. Right. Yeah. Yeah. The design is all the same. The levels are wholesale stolen. It's not even like an homage. It's just theft.
And it's somewhat notorious in the gaming industry too, right? Because previously that used to be the norm. Like, there are a million games that have a rip-off of Level 1-1 in Super Mario Brothers, and there's like a 20 million rip-offs of Pac-Man and stuff like that. But like the Great Gianna Sisters was one of the first, their producer was one of the first studios to actually be taken down by Nintendo as a result of copyright litigation, to indicate that they were playing serious, like in the US and the Japanese market.
Gotcha.
So that's a bit of a footnote. They're like one of the first copyrights to actually not get away with it.
Well, Miss Pac-Man was the other one.
Well, I mean, that also got enfolded into an actual retail game, so I wouldn't say they didn't.
Yeah. They didn't, though, because they would have been sued into oblivion if they hadn't made that an official game.
Well, sure, but it's not like Nintendo went out and bought the rest of Gianna Sisters. They've sort of labored in obscurity while you go ahead and... I'm going to let you go ahead and finish your story.
No, that's it.
I'd love to see another one of those. So, like, I played the Steam one, Twisted Dreams, and it has its own mechanical identity now. With a, it's a pretty standard. Like you push a button and your character's moveset changes. You're 2 characters in one, which is something that's been explored before. But like the entire art style of the game changes when you shift, which is. Dynamically, which is pretty impressive. And I think the old games, the DS one and the original one, also have HD re-releases on Steam. They look bad in the 2D HD remake kind of way on Steam, like the
low polygon kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like the game doesn't really support HD graphics. It's a blocky platformer, so it's really obvious that the sprites are almost like too detailed for the mechanics of the game. Like, they have too much weight to them.
Sure. Well, I'm excited for this to be a new norm, and I obviously want more and more titles like this to come out. I think that even some of the gold box games are getting this treatment. I would love to see a Eye of the Beholder remake. I think that's in the works, which would be awesome. Hopefully they get the Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack from the Sega CD version. That would be fantastic. But we'll have to see as time goes on, but I'm sure we'll talk about those in Recon as they come out and are announced. So we'll move on to my weigh-in. I actually stayed the same. I stayed consistent at 254.
At 5. Whoa, calm down there.
No, I have a major eating problem. No, like I said before in past instances, I really just wanted to control myself. I had been gaining weight, and now I'm very much normalized. So I'm happy for myself in that regard. I'm very stable. So hopefully this will encourage me to finally get some exercise and start moving down. But I think harnessing your weight is a very important part of the game here.
My dad went through a similar transformation. Like when he got married, he put on 50 pounds, and so like getting that back under control. I mean he was a swimmer, so like he was very light right before he got married. So it wasn't entirely just the being happy and eating big Italian meals all the time. That it was also a lifestyle change. But like bringing that under control was like an important part of his 30s. Yeah, so like I understand where you're coming from.
Yeah. It's gotten to the point where I'm watching myself, and watching myself enough has been able to give me a homeostasis point where I'm not in danger of getting any worse. So I'm thankful for that because you can just keep on going. I mean, really, and I do not want to do this. This is the heaviest I've ever been, and heaviest in a long time that I've been. So I definitely want to get in the other direction. It's just difficult for me. But at least I'm putting in the effort in order to harness it. So having said that, we do have some fan reactions here.
Yeah, we have 2. So Dracologist has kind of 2 different reactions. One of them is...
And so does the General Ledger.
General Ledger. Yeah, there you go. So Dracologist is talking about Dead Cells at first, and he says his problem with it is that enemies get really damage spongy after a while. Also, did you know that if you press jump and down in mid-air, like down jump, you can perform a dive bomb attack anytime you want? So that's kind of cool.
That's actually one of the most useful attacks in the game. It's very, very effective.
Now, this concerns last week's question, like, what's a good, like, oh, this sounds like final boss music to me? He said, Emperor Zinyax's theme from Saints Row 4. Mick Gordon, Mastermind. You'll know what I mean when you look it up. I guess I'll have to look it up. And if you want something bombastic, Shadow Warrior 2. The lead up to the boss fight is even better, actually. And
I heard those games are great, the
so
Shadow Warrior games, yeah.
And for kicks, Zed, or it's in all capital, so Z-E-D, Zed Blade Last Stage soundtrack.
Oh yeah, that game's soundtrack is phenomenal. So that's Operation Zed Blade. That was a shmup on the Neo Geo.
Jeez.
It was well known for having a Euro trance soundtrack, or
nice.
Euro house soundtrack in the 90s, before that kind of thing was really popular, or during that time that it was popular, but not in a video game sense.
Okay. Number 2 here we got General Ledger. This is going back a little bit to food related quirks. My wife and I have a few food quirks. I prefer carrots raw and dried out. I must also eat button candies like M&Ms or Skittles in pairs, preferably of the same color.
Especially the blue ones.
I can kind of get behind that. If I'm left with an odd number, I give the final one to someone else or throw it out.
Especially if it's blue.
My wife requires a generous serving of vegetables with every meal. It has nothing to do with healthy eating. She just really likes veggies. She also does not like chunky bits, like nuts or cookie dough, in her ice cream.
Wow.
That one really speaks to me because I was never able to like drink like orange juice with pulp in it. There are certain things I just require a smooth texture.
I hate orange juice with pulp in it. The taste is the same, but I cannot deal with that.
I'm the opposite.
Well, if ice cream has like chocolate bits in it, I can get behind that. But yeah, I'm not big on nuts in ice cream. No, thank you.
See, I'm the opposite with peanut butter. I actually and with orange juice, I like the chunks in it because it makes it seem more like a real product.
More hearty.
No, like especially since like things like Skippy is super refined. But
Yeah,
I
that's
tend
true.
to like natural peanut butter anyway, so the grains in that tend to, even in the smooth version of that, tend to be thicker anyway. So it lets me know that there are actual peanuts in it. Now,
Yeah.
like orange juice that's super refined like that, it just doesn't seem real to me. So I
gotcha.
kind of like having that fresh, squeezed texture of the pulp.
If I have a choice, I'll go with smooth peanut butter, but I can do chunky peanut butter. But like I cannot deal with orange juice with pulp. It's just like, oh no.
Just use your teeth as a filter. You'll be all right.
Yeah, there we go. All right, so and to finish General Ledger's post, while not a final boss theme, the stealth attack leitmotif from Arkham City feels like one, if taken from the perspectives of the minions. Where's the boss? Oh, I'm the boss. That's pretty rad, actually.
Those Arkham games are great. I need to go back and play the last one. I
Same
didn't get a
with
chance to play
me. I
Night.
still gotta play Night. Yeah. All right. So this week's fan question is also Thakathon, like from last week. So last time it was what sounds like a final boss theme to you. This time, what game do you think has the best level up feedback to the players? Like it just feels good to level up. One of my Thakathon's favorite is Phantasy Star Online, since it plays a cool jingle, shows what stats you get, has a nice visual effect, heals your character, and doesn't stop gameplay. I kind of get that. I don't see a stat boost, but everything else applies to Nier, like a little doo-doo-doo, and you're fully healed, and you know that the next time you hit something, it's going to be a little stronger. That's kind of nice.
I kind of like the way this is actually kind of counterintuitive to the question, but I like leveling up in Dark Souls. You are leveling up on a Spartan menu, but every time you level up, it should be a struggle.
Just seeing those numbers turn blue when, like, just press X and it'll happen, and you're like,
Yeah.
oh.
every time you gain any kind of advantage in that game, it is extremely satisfying.
Especially because you can be over-prepared. So it's like, just one more level up, and I can actually wear that armor. Or cast that spell.
Exactly. So, like, gaining any level in that, even though the fanfare is very muted in the game for it. It just basically it's just a number changing on a screen. You feel it because of how hard you worked in order to get the souls required for it.
Actually, here's something of an unconventional answer. And the funny thing is, I'm not even really big on playing these games. But when you beat a boss in Mega Man or Mega Man X, when it's like, especially old Mega Man, where it shows you like the crazy robot footage of like the X-ray view of Mega Man, but it's like, you got this power, and it shows you firing it, and you're like, oh, what's that going to be like when I hit something with it, you know?
Yeah, and actually coming along with that, I just beat the the main part of the Mario Odyssey games. I of course haven't collected all the power moons or even unlocked all the stuff, but I've beaten the game. But beaten Bowser. So the old way that they reward you with the jingle every time you get a star or a shine or whatever collectible in Mario has always been extremely effective ever since they started it with Mario 64.
Yeah, I was actually going to say, I think I prefer Mario 64, and it's not even because of nostalgia. It's just like, Mario Sunshine's actually is also really good, but I think it took a little too long in Mario Galaxy. But in Mario 64, bam! Like, got it. It just felt great.
Well, I don't think this is pretty much. I don't think this is a spoiler thing because it's just like a fun thing they did in Mario Odyssey. But after you beat the game, you go to a recreation of the a modern looking recreation of the Toadstool's castle in Mario 64. and you can even change to a costume that gives you the low polygon look. To make you look exactly like Mario 64 Mario.
Well, it's required to get a couple of stars in the game too.
Exactly.
Oh, really?
And not only that, but the power moons turn into the low polygon stars from
that's great.
from Mario 64.
What disappointed me was that level did not have exactly 120 stars. It has close, but not quite 120 stars.
That's like that's like Pokemon Snap. It had 63 Pokemon, not 64, and you're like, ooh.
Well, the funny thing is, their attention to detail is high, but not quite high enough. So you can go to the roof of the castle, and Yoshi is there, and you can take over Yoshi for the first time in the game.
Oh, wow.
You can possess Yoshi and be Yoshi, which is really neat.
That's crazy.
And he plays completely differently than Mario does.
Yeah.
And there's a star for staring at the roof of the inside of the castle, which would get you
nice.
which would access a secret level in Mario 64.
Yep.
Oh, you mean the cap level?
Yeah,
the wing cap level?
The wing cap. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
No, actually, I was going to mention real quick, by the way, the White Day remake that came out a couple years ago. Well, I guess even more if you count the mobile. But you can select the year 2000 low polygon model for your character if you'd like, which is kind of amusing.
That's
Nice.
awesome.
Yeah, from the old Korean PC game.
For the original question, I'm going to give a shout out to Final Fantasy XIV just to get that in there before we diverge too strongly on this particular tangent. Any MMO, you expect it to be extremely satisfying when you level up, because that's basically the whole gameplay loop, is doing meaningless quests or daily activities until you level up your character. So it better be really good. So in 14, it's very nice. You get you get a nice particle effect. You get a big level ups on the screen. It plays the Final Fantasy victory music for every single level. You almost always get a new skill like every other level. So you're improving very rapidly, and usually you get access to new gear every other level. So it's worth it. You progress very linearly in that game.
Final Fantasy's always been good at that as a series. I feel.
Yeah.
Their fanfares, and also when you level up in the screens after a battle in Final Fantasy VII, they always gave you the good kind of feedback that your brain needs in order to go, yeah, I accomplished something by leveling up here.
Especially in those old school RPGs where certain levels it would be you have fire, but you learned Firaga, and you're like, oh sweet, so you just have a new thing now.
Oh, it's so liberating when you finally learn something that pushes you over the top like that, a new skill that will open up more combat possibilities or something like that. Very, very important, and a great feeling, especially when you're struggling in a game, like an RPG where you're under powered compared to the rest of the world in a lot of ways.
Actually, what was also kind of nice was Mario RPG, where you would get that screen where you congratulate yourself, and then it's pick a level up bonus you would like. Here's a stat boost. Which one would you like? That was kind of nice too.
Absolutely.
So another good one. Oh, sorry. I want to give another shout out to the Metroid power up theme music, especially later as the game has become more story driven, and also as it's incorporated more set pieces that require you to go through an area for which the power up you get at the end of it is good at beating the thing that just started chasing you. Is that it's very cathartic to get that power up music, and then you turn back around to the area that just gave you so much trouble, or the boss that nearly killed you, chasing you, previously invulnerable to your attacks until you picked up this new power up, and you go oh, you are so fucked now.
Yeah, Ease is like that too, and in fact actually has a similar sounding jingle that a lot of longtime fans have pointed out. It sounds just like Metroid's jingle.
There must be something to that, like a rising chord progression or something that really invokes a sense of becoming more powerful and satisfied.
Yeah, and particularly in Ease, finding an item is almost more satisfying than leveling up, because that allows you to progress just like in Metroid. So,
oh yeah, in the original Ease, being at max level means you're halfway through the game.
Yeah. That level is not the most important thing in Ease by a long shot.
But by the way, speaking of progressing in Metroid, I'm just bringing this up now because I've been playing it lately. That's my current Let's Play is Shadow Man. But in that game, the idea is to find 120 stars, except it's Dark Souls throughout the game. And when you pick one up, the screen, like, you see your character, but like the background goes completely black, and you just see these crazy purple swirls coming out of him, like, yes. But, like, you're not actually powering up, except when you get a certain amount, like, once you've gotten X number of Dark Souls, you actually do level up, so you get, like, a different animation, so when you see it, you know shit's about to go down, because this means you can charge your gun for one notch longer, and also there are these gates that require you to be anywhere from level 1 through 10, so all of a sudden you can open up gate level +1 when you level up. So that's just new areas of the game you know you can enter now. So it's not that the level up itself feels so good, but you know the significance of having leveled up.
Excellent. Any last remarks here on this topic? I mean, there's plenty of other options, I'm sure, that we can enumerate on for hours, but I think we gave a good survey here.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I could mention, and I don't even really have a specific game for this, but ones that are very linear where you don't play previous levels again, and leveling up is like a scripted thing, so you don't kill enough things to level up. It's just beating the level means you've powered up. Like, I'll see this on, like, Flash games or things like that, but just, like, because you beat level 1, you get a health bonus or something like that. So even though you know you're going to need that for level 2, the game is balancing its stealth, it still kind of tricks you into feeling nice.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Any final remarks there, OldManStompy, or just Stompy now?
Yes, just Stompy. I'll give a point to like gacha pulls in mobile games. I know I shouldn't feel this good about it, but when you get like that 5-star item or whatever, usually like the screen is like orgasmic. You know, they really want you to feel rewarded by that. I'm not saying it's a good thing necessarily, but like it's obviously engineered to make you want to spend more money on the game, but it's still immensely satisfying.
They know what they're doing.
I'm a human being.
It's just like going to Burger King and they knowing that they made a special smell just to make you hungry. Mm-hmm. It's playing with your circuitry, but it's still effective.
Or when they release a new burger that has like a 4th patty on it or something, it's like you don't need that 4th patty, but you're compelled to feel like your stomach can fit it.
Well, not only that, but you get to say that you ordered that item from the menu. Like, that wasn't on the menu before, but if I order it, then I'll get to say that I have ordered everything on the menu, or stuff like that.
Oh yeah, the completionists at Burger King, I guess that exists.
But isn't a Baconator just a regular burger with a couple extra things? Yeah, but
don't you want those couple of extra things?
Yeah.
Well, that's actually kind of funny now that I mentioned some things earlier with my weigh-in. When I was a kid, I really looked up to my older brother. My older brother's like 7 years older than me, and he was a teenager when I was during my formative years. So I really looked up to him, and he used to a lot of teenage boys. He used to eat like a dump truck's worth of food, and I kind of equated it to manliness. Like, he and my dad would eat this is such a good meal. It's just like I ate this gigantic steak or something like that. So like it was a sign of manhood. And I wanted to be part of that. So like I used to stuff myself to try to keep up. And then eventually I got to the point where I could eat as much as them, like a lot younger than I was supposed to.
Oh boy.
I equate that with a lot of my weight issues as an adult. You can't really get rid of circuitry like that. Like, I might be able to trick myself and ignore it or get good at managing it, but my brain has a primal need to want to buy one of those novelty burgers and stuff it down my mouth and show the world who's boss.
Even by my standards, I like to drink a Starbucks latte once in a while, and you tell yourself, oh, I'm going to get a grande, but if I get a venti, it's only like 50 cents more, and I can enjoy it for like an extra 15 minutes, and it's probably got an extra 150 calories in it or whatever, so it's really not worth it, but you're compelled to do it.
Yeah, so I did want to mention that's a component that I hardly ever hear about in Weight Watchers meetings and like support groups for weight loss. nobody ever talks about that aspect, and maybe that's because it's a masculinity thing. And also, like, men don't really have a lot of help for weight loss like women do. Weight Watchers is primarily geared towards women. I mean, they try to include men as kind of like an extra, like, let's see if we can get an extra 10% men compared to our 90% women. Or increase a percentage here or there. They don't try to make it equal in any aspect. I mean, they'd like it to happen, but I don't think they think it's realistic.
Mm-hmm.
But the reality is that like I'm mentioning, men have other reasons for overeating than women do, or have other compulsions that are unrelated. So I think I like to bring that up because I never hear that, and I know I'm not the only person that's felt that way. That eating a large amount of food has like an accomplishment attached to it as a man. Maybe it's a negative thing for a woman to eat that much, but for like I was always praised, for that kind of thing. It's like, oh man, you could eat that? That's awesome.
There are actual contests, like eating contests.
Yeah, precisely. So, like, oh man, you went to that all-you-can-eat night of all-you-can-eat wing night. Like, you're a champ. That's awesome. Like, nobody ever puts you down for doing that kind of thing.
And what did he do after they ran out of fish? He went fishing.
But my point is, nobody ever mentions it as, that's not exactly something you should be praised for.
So, like, for a birthday party once, a bunch of my friends went to one of those Brazilian-style steakhouses called Rodizio. And
I've been there.
Yeah, they give you a sign that just says stop and go on one side. And they just keep bringing you food until you turn the sign from go to stop.
Oh, wow.
And, like, there is, like, a competitive yearning that, like, I know that my friends largely felt, especially the men on the table, to, like, be the last one or among the last one to go to stop, even while you're, like, sweating, because you've eaten so much meat in the last, like, hour and a half to 2 hours. And it's kind of gross when you, like, take a step back and think about it.
Oh, yeah.
It's also, like, supremely wasteful,
Yeah, and I used to remember this happening on, and you guys would know this because of where you went to school. King Neptune night at Rutgers was like that too. You would see some people like with like 3 or 4 lobster carcasses in front of them that they've just decimated because they stuffed so much perceived expensive food down their craw.
Well, part of that also might have been the exclusivity. I mean, you said it yourself, King Neptune night. It's not like every Monday. It's like once a year.
No, once a year.
You want to make it count. So, like, take what you can, which is still not a very good idea, but I understand.
But it's still seen as a masculine thing. I never saw a girl, do that kind of thing or were encouraged to do that kind of thing, at least. Whereas, you and your friend, me and my guy friends, would try to house as much, even just saying house as much lobster as we could, like that shouldn't be a thing that we do. And it's unhealthy and it's wasteful. I credit it to a lot of my inner workings that work incorrectly, that I have to put in a lot of effort to fight. And if I didn't learn that lesson long ago, it wouldn't be part of my body's language of telling me what I need to do at any given moment. I wish it weren't a part of my body's vocabulary, but unfortunately, it's part of a major way of the way that my body speaks to me. So it just sucks. So I do want to bring that up, that maybe those of us that have nephews, nieces, sons and daughters, young kids that we care about, maybe not encouraging them, their young boys to eat like that in order to show that as an accomplishment, because it certainly worked on me.
By the way, very much in that vein. Also, like, unless you've, like, carefully apportioned the amount of food you gave them, you don't have to force them to clean their plate either. Like, leftovers are allowed to exist. Like, if they're full, man.
In fact, they say that the healthiest way you could be is to leave like an eighth of your food sitting there.
Well, this is especially true for restaurants. Like, it's not even we care how much food we eat, it just looks weird to not finish what we eat. If restaurants gave us smaller plates and filled those, we would eat that food and still feel satisfied, just psychologically. It's not like, wait, isn't some food missing? Like, no, I ate everything, it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I recently have been playing the game of cutting all of my sandwiches in half and saying to myself, I'm only going to eat half of the sandwich, and it's always enough. Like, especially with the way hamburgers are made these days. With the way hamburgers are made, they're gigantic. Like, if you go down to a sit-down restaurant or a or a bar or a pub, they all make these ridiculously awesome rich hamburgers that are really great. But you can eat half of that and then have another half for lunch.
And this goes double for a diner sandwich. Those things are monsters.
Yeah, like a corned beef sandwich or
oh my God,
a Reuben or something like that.
I love corned beef, but I also love like being able to physically eat the thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I know I've diverged here, but I thought that this was an important enough thing for me to point out, and also to let people know this may not even be a thing that you even recognize in yourself, and you go, hey, wait, maybe I am eating too much because, when I was little, I thought it was awesome to eat a lot. So I'm just pointing that out. But I'll digress and.
So I hope that answered your question, Fakafon, of leveling up.
So that is the show for this week. For more Teletubby action, please check us out on Recon next week. We want to thank all of our fans who contributed questions. Please keep us supplied with awesome topics by submitting questions of your own via the YouTube and Soundcloud pages. Let's get some new voices out there, guys. We love Fakafon and Dracologist supplying us with questions, but they're team members pretty much. So we want the fans to get their voice heard here. While there, please give us thumbs ups, likes, and 5-star ratings on iTunes, and also give us some shares. Share your favorite, hopefully your favorite podcast where Vise misreads the outro constantly.
Yes.
Share it and give us a kind word. I'm sure your friends would love to hear something good if they have the time to listen. Helps promote and spread awareness of the show, and any bit of encouragement helps keep the show going. You can also catch us on Tuesdays on our sister podcast, Reactive Consciousness, the in-depth look at this week in our lives. Finally, you can friend me as vysethebold on Steam, PSN, Xbox Live, Twitter, Battle.net, and Switch.
And you can follow me on my YouTube channel, Lotus Prince. You can hit me up on Twitter at Lotus Prince. And finally, if you're interested in seeing videos early, getting in on exclusive live streams, selecting upcoming games for me to Let's Play, or getting in on a Discord chat with me and other Patreon members, then perhaps consider swinging by my Patreon account, which can be found at patreon.com/LotusPrince.
And you can find me as OldManStompy on most major gaming and social media networks except for Steam. Or if you're tired of listening to me aggravate Vysethebold, you can listen to me aggravate my little sister on her Twitch stream on the channel.
I never get tired of it. I actually like being aggravated by you.
Boy, do I have some good news for you then.
Vice, if you're hearing OldManStompy's outro, go away.
Anyway, you can hear her Twitch stream on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. on Asuna335, and you can find me as a co-commentator and occasional chat or moderator. So come check it out.
Excellent. Well, we will catch you on Tuesday, everyone, for another episode of Reactive. Catch you then.
Until next time, everyone.
Cheers.